This is the compensatory concept with Mr. Neely Fuller, heard exclusively on TalkTainmentRadio.com, the world's greatest radio. Radio the way it should be heard. And now, Mr. Neely Fuller.
If you do not understand white supremacy, which is racism, what it is and how it works, everything else that you understand will only confuse you. Only confuse you. Only confuse you.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome to TalkTainmentRadio.com. We go where you go, the world's greatest radio. You are now in touch with the compensatory concept with Mr. Neely Fuller. I am your co-host, Mr. Bobby, and this is radio the way it should be heard. Now, if you'd like to get in contact with the show, you may do so this way. You can call 1-877-932-9766. You can Gmail me at the numero 7, Mr. Bobby, BOBBY, at gmail.com. You can also do this. You can watch live broadcast of the compensatory concept. All you have to do is go to YouTube, type in the word Talktainment, hit the space bar and type in the word radio, scroll down to Talktainment number 2 live on YouTube and watch the live broadcast. While you are there, hit the like and subscribe button. And finally, to hear a replay of the entire show, you can go to facebook.com/Talktainment, and you can hear the entire show. Before we say good morning to Mr. Fuller, two things right off the bat. Breaking news from NBC News. The Austin bomb suspect blows himself up as his SWAT teams approach. The suspect, in a spat of bombings that terrorized the residents of Austin, Texas, died early Wednesday after detonating an explosive inside his vehicle as SWAT team approached and tried to apprehend him on the side of a highway. The authorities tracked the suspect, a 24-year-old white man, to a hotel in Round Rock City in the Austin metropolitan area. Austin Police Chief Brian Manley said at a news conference. They tracked his vehicle until he pulled over on the Interstate 35 and, quote, the suspect detonated a bomb inside the vehicle, knocking one of the SWAT officers back, Manley said, adding that the officer sustained minor injuries. Another member of the SWAT team, fired as standard practice, has been placed on administrative duty while the investigation continues. The suspect is deceased and has significant injuries from a blast that occurred from detonating a bomb inside the vehicle, the police chief said. Shortly after the announcement, President Trump congratulated law enforcement personnel. So the guy blew himself up, and it was a white suspect. He had been bombing black people. So according to NBC News this morning, he blew himself up. So that's breaking news. Another, before we talk to Mr. Fuller, is the announcement and the belated birthday celebration, if you will, or a notation of Dr. Francis Cress Welsing on this past Sunday, the 18th. I think in the show we may have a little 2-minute section where she predicted that Trump would win the election in 2015. Very powerful words, but we want to acknowledge Dr. Francis Cress Welsing. Okay, with that out the way, we have Mr. Neely Fuller on the line, live from Washington, D.C., and he will be answering your Gmails and your questions or concerns. Again, you can call in or Gmail me, and we will have Mr. Fuller address those. Mr. Fuller, good morning to you.
Good morning.
And how are you today, Mr. Fuller?
I'm still learning.
You are still learning. Okay. Before we go on with the entire program, which today is going to be entitled Words, the Importance of Words, the Understanding of Words, could you address your book. A lot of people have been talking about it. I understand that there are people that are trying to purchase the book, even from overseas in areas where you said the book was not. I am getting communication where the book is now from I don't know what source, but people are getting the book. So can you address how we can get the book, the title, and any pertinent information?
The complete title is The United Independent Compensatory Code System Concept. That's the basic title of the entire concept that I present on this program every week. But the title of the book is an addition to the basic book, which has a supplementary title or complementary title. All the titles are equal. A compensatory counter-racist code, but the word guide portion is called a compensatory counter-racist codified word guide, which is an addition to the revised expanded edition of the 2016 edition of the compensatory counter-racist code. Now, the compensatory counter-racist codified word guide is designed to, it doesn't have all of the English words, not even a major portion of the words in the English language, but it has significant portions of, I tried to put as many of them as I could in one volume so that a person could carry it around, so that a person could, at least the individual person, the individual victim of racism, could at least get an idea of how words are being used to provide the cement. I usually use that type of metaphor, that type of expression, the cement that holds the everyday system of white supremacy together. They have a system of racism set up called the system of white supremacy. And in the English language and in all languages, they try to tailor the language, and they have successfully done that. That's why their operations are successful. In every language, they have taken everything associated with the word darkness, not in all cases, but in most cases, black, dark, always foreboding, always something that is derogatory. It's a dark day. It's a dark mood. Now, no one has ever photographed a mood, to my knowledge. How do you get a picture of a mood, a person's mood, and say that the mood is dark? But the white supremacists say, well, that person, has a dark attitude. Anything that's supposed to be dangerous is dark. So naturally, if you come up thinking that way, then you see a dark-skinned person, then you say that person is something to be dealt with. That person is something to avoid. That person is something to do harm to. Why? Because it's associated visually with darkness. So we're kind of familiar with the use of the word black. They say a black lie is that's a terrible lie. You tell a black lie, you have messed up big time. But you can tell a white one all day, all right? Little white lies. Sometimes they call them little. They put a word in front of it. That's the use of words. Little white lies. They even have a song called that. Now that you have told me those little white lies. But, a black lie, they don't always put the word big in front of it. Most of the times they don't. But they just say, that's a black lie. Well, now you're really getting in the lying business big time when you say it's a black lie. Oh, but has anybody ever photographed the color of a lie? But these are very common terms that we have accepted as being, black people even use the term. White lies, black lies, because we've been taught that without even thinking about it. What's a black lie? What's a white lie? All right. How do you distinguish between the two? A lie is a lie. You either said something that is true or you said something that is false. That's the way it is, logically speaking. But nothing in the system of white supremacy is supposed to be based on generic logic. It's supposed to be based on white supremacist logic. So all of the words that go into the system of white supremacy are designed to support white supremacy. If a white supremacist uses the term, it's designed to support white supremacy. This is the main thing to remember. I mean, and why I'm presenting the word guide here, so that people get an idea and be alert to how words are used every day. I mean, to do things that words should not do under the system of white supremacy. And that's why that's an addition to the basic textbook. You can get the basic textbook and the word guide by going to producejustice.com. That's producejustice.com.
Oh, okay. Now, moving on in the program. Now, this is a special announcement for those who are using Mr. Fuller's work without compensation to him. I want you to understand this. Hear me closely. That the pendulum swings both ways. Mr. Fuller has addressed this. Some of the people who communicate with me via email are very disturbed that whoever you are, and you know who you are using the work in a way that is not supposed to be used and not acknowledging Mr. Fuller or giving him credit for that. Just wanted to make that announcement because I've gotten several letters and emails about that, and it's an ongoing problem. Mr. Fuller has addressed it several times on this show. And to the brother in England who wrote in, Mr. McKinnon, we are going to address, he wanted to know something, Mr. Fuller, about the donations. Mr. Fuller is not a part of that, but we will have the donation hour is usually the second hour, but we are taking donations. He wanted to know if we were. Yes, we are taking donations. Mr. Anthony McKeon, I believe the name was, from England. So hopefully that addressed his concerns. Okay, Mr. Fuller, let's go here. Going to the Gmails. 1-877-932-9766 is the number that you can call. Okay, the first Gmail is up. This comes from Prentice. Says this, Mr. Fuller, what does the code say about how one should answer self-identification of race on job applications and surveys? For example, since there is only one race, the human race, it seems like self-identifying a race is submitting to the white supremacist ideology.
Well, you can simply ask, is that a requirement, and then act accordingly, because you're in a prison. The entire system of white supremacy is a global prison for anyone classified as non-white. So if you're classified as non-white, you know, somebody told you you were black. You didn't know you were black until somebody said that you were black, or brown, or yellow. You know, you hear the term black and brown, even though most black people are brown. So that's confusing to a lot of people. But it's the white supremacists who invented this thing called race, by all of the evidence that we have been able to gather down through the centuries. Mm-hmm. I mean, they invented that idea of race and racism, and, you know, some people call it racism. I mean, because the term raw is connected with, I have been told, the sun. People who have been, you know, blessed or burnt, you might say, by the sun. And some white people, and I'm not talking about all white people, but presumably some person who looked at him or herself as being white decided to set up a royalist system, which is basically fundamentally what it is. It's a royalist system based on, if you're white, you're royal. Mm. And if you're non-white, you can't be a member of the royal family. I mean, you can have titles and whatnot within the royal family. I mean, you can be, even in the modern days, husband, wife, et cetera, or you can be a quote, unquote, servant, footman, somebody in the royal castle, in the royal circle, you might say, but you, yourself, you're not really royal. You're not born royal. But in the system of white supremacy, if you are classified as white from birth, then you're born royal. And that means what? On a day-to-day basis, that you have the ability and the duty to dominate and mistreat anyone who is not royal, meaning any person classified as black, brown, red, yellow, tan, beige, and or, as an envelope term, non-white. If you're non-white, you're non-royal. You can't be a member of the royal family. I mean, you might be a nice person, you might be a very smart person, you might be very accomplished, you might be a great inventor. The white supremacists pay no attention to that at all. That's their duty. They simply say they pay attention to it, they'll utilize it and all like that. They'll pay that kind of attention. But as far as giving you any royal credibility, you don't get that. Doesn't make any difference what you do, how hard you try. Some black people think, well, if I do this and I do that, then I can be considered. No, you got to be born royal. No. Sorry about that, buddy. No, you can't hitch that. You can't hitch yourself on that ride. You know, you got black skin. How are you going to be royal? Come on. I mean, get real. I mean, you can't be royal. You can't be acceptable. You are something. You are a thing to be despised and used for whatever purpose that a royal person wants to, utilize you for. But basically, dominance and mistreatment. That's what it's about. See, so black people become bewildered and all like that, said, I went to this school and, and they told me that I got this degree and I did this and I did that and I'm a great inventor and, I have a mother and a father and a grandfather, and they did all great things. They never were in trouble or, they never were, making trouble for anybody. They always helped people and all like that. They say, yes, that's all very nice if you want to tell other black people that. And they will be impressed by it. Mm-hmm. But I'm a white man, or I'm a white woman, and it's my duty to disregard all of that. That's a duty, black fella. I sympathize with you and your feelings, about how it should be, but it's just not that way. You're not royal. Sorry about that. If you had been born royal, no problem. But I didn't make you born. I didn't have anything to do with that. I'm a white person. I was born royal. I didn't have anything to do with that, but it just worked out that way.
Yes, sir.
All right? Now, if every black person on the planet understands that, you understand the essence of the system of white supremacy. And you've got to understand that in order to understand the essence of the system of white supremacy. That's an absolute must.
That's in the front of the
It's a royal system. Mm-hmm. It has nothing to do with how nice you are, how hard you work. It has to do with you were born, and you were born not royal, not a member of the supreme class. End of story. That's according to the white supremacists.
Correct. And that comment is in the beginning of the United Independent Compensatory Code System concept when you said if you do not understand white supremacy, racism, what it is and how it works, everything else that you understand will only confuse you. Let's go to the phone lines. Line number 1. You are now on with Mr. Neely Fuller. What is your question for Mr. Fuller?
Hello, guys. This is Gregory from Florida. How you guys doing today?
Good morning, Gregory. Go ahead with your question.
Good. I have 2 questions for Mr. Fuller. One would be like, for instance, if we are, as a people of color, following your code and that we have better ethics and everything, does he think that people who have this loyal mindset will still even treat us better if that is their way of thinking, if they're holier than thou? Even if we are following proper codes, ethics, and everything, will that make a difference?
Mr. Fuller?
I always, I know this annoys the audience and all like that, but every time
You couldn't
I
hear me,
miss the essence of this question. Now, I guess that's my fault. But what exactly is the question?
The essence of the question, Mr. Fuller, is the fact that if we do follow the code that you've written, with people being holier than thou or acting that way, will they treat us any differently, regardless of what we decide to do or how we are?
Oh, the code is directed to black people themselves. We're not trying, it includes, as in the textbook, there's a list of things that white people can do that you can, when they ask, and you can always ask them of things that you want done. That's a part of the code. But you don't expect them to do it. I mean, because you're in a prison system. Just imagine yourself every day as being born in prison, because this is the truth. Now, that's a statement I just made. That statement is either true or false. You're born in a global prison, a world prison, if you're a person of color. You're born in that prison. So naturally, if you're born in a prison, you have to ask the prison masters, you have to interact with the prison masters, because you're in their prison. You're in their prison. So you don't expect anything in the prison except punishment. But you always ask. That's why I sometimes use prison movies to just, it's an easy way to just learn. Even if you've never been in what you call in greater confinement, what the code calls in greater confinement, what we call prison or jail and whatnot. You can look at movies like Shawshank Redemption. That's what a prison is like, all right? Or you can look at Cool Hand Luke. I mean, some prisons are worse than others and all like that. I mean, what you call greater confinement, because you're already in prison. But they take black people, they pick them up every day and put them into what you call greater confinement. And you go to places like Angola, in Louisiana in the northwestern hemisphere, and other places, Folsom. These are the names of greater confinement places where a lot of black people populate. And you go anywhere in the world, you see a lot of dark-skinned people behind bars. That's what you call greater confinement. They're already confined when they're born.
Yes.
All right? You're confined. You're already in prison when
Yes.
you're born. It's just that you get further punishment for being the color that you are. So they put you in greater confinement. And then when they put you in greater confinement, they even put you in something inside the greater confinement called what? Solitary confinement.
Solitary confinement.
Yeah, it depends on what they choose to do. So in answer to your question, yes, if the code says you ask for what should be given, all right, you always ask. I mean, you're in prison, so you ask the prison masters what you want, okay? You accept what they grant, which is, under the system of white supremacy, you're probably not going to get it.
Right.
For sure. Every now and then you'll get a little something, depends on how they feel at the moment, how they view you at the moment.
Okay.
And then you compensate for the difference. The difference between what? The difference between what you asked for and what you got.
All right.
And that's where the code kicks in.
That's where it kicks in.
I mean, the part of the code that you act on. You ask for something, and they said, no, I'm not giving you that. Then you go to the code book and find out what you can do as a result of that type of answer.
Okay.
All right, that's what the code book is for. That's why it's called the compensatory code. In other words, you compensate yourself. When you ask for compensation from them and they don't give it to you, then you figure out a way to get that compensation yourself within the system of racism until you can finally absolutely obliterate the system of racism itself, like Andy Dufresne did by bringing down the warden of that prison in the movie Shawshank Redemption. That's why I often refer to that movie as one that you can get the lesson that the basic code is about.
Okay.
How you go about working from inside of a prison to actually, to a great extent, destroy the prison.
What is your second question, sir?
My second question is, I would like to know Mr. Fuller's opinion on how he thinks that white males have been able to do so much in the world, like rape and rob the world, and yet still the reputation of robbers is put on us. as a people, and they've been able to do things all across the world, but yet still we have the reputation of being like this person.
Okay. Mr. Fuller?
We have a reputation of being what?
Robbers and stealers, whereas the white man has stole the resources of all throughout the world by doing this, but yet still we have the reputation of a person who's done the things that he's done.
Oh, sure. We're all thieves. I mean, they teach us to be thieves and whatnot, and robbers. I mean, you know, that's the main thing, and then punish us for doing it. They set up everything where we have to be criminals because we've already been convicted of a major crime. And I wrote something on that this morning. What's the global crime that you already been convicted of? Yeah, and so in a general conversation, you say, if you're talking about law and racism, you are asked if you have ever been convicted of a major crime. You can always, that's every black person, can always truthfully say, if you choose to do so, in general conversation about law and racism, you are asked if you have ever been convicted of a major crime. You can always, in any setting, answer truthfully by saying, yes, I have been convicted of and have always been punished for the global crime of breathing while black. That's the crime. Breathing while black in the system of white supremacy. And you have already been convicted of that. You can never say that you haven't been convicted of a crime. Under common law, in the system of white supremacy, you can make that statement anywhere and you'll be saying something that's absolutely true. If you're black and you're on this planet, no one can step forward and say you're lying under oath, or you're lying just in a general conversation, or that, you know, you're lying, period. No, that's an absolute truth. You were convicted before you were born. You came into the world a convict, put into the prison of the system of white supremacy, unless somebody can prove that the system of white supremacy does not exist. And there are people who debate that. There's some black people who say that you know, that's Neely Fuller's perception. I mean, you know, he needs to stop saying that. I mean, that doesn't exist. People have told me that, you know, directly. You know, I've been in seminars where there's on record where a person, you know, a black person said, Fuller, you might have correct intentions, but man, you got it all wrong. That thing called white supremacy doesn't exist, man. You ought to stop saying that. You're delusional, you know. But I say it either does or it doesn't. And what the person says about me when I make that statement is either true or false. All right? So you can just take your pick. Because it might turn out, and I always tell people, make up your own mind. That's up to you. Does it exist or doesn't it? I've seen no evidence where it doesn't. None.
Okay.
Not to my satisfaction. All right? But a lot of people say they see evidence everywhere. That whole thing about white supremacy is a myth. It's a myth. It's an illusion. It's something that people just, you know, that in all their honesty, they might think that it's there, but it's really not there. All you got to do is just go on about your business, mind your own business, go do your thing, and don't worry about no racism because it ain't here.
Wow.
And a lot of black people will say that. But I came to the conclusion a long time ago because I was trying to believe what they were saying. You know, I came up trying to believe that. I wanted to believe that.
Okay.
Racism does not exist.
Okay.
All right.
Or a Gmail came in about a comment that you made last week's show about the white man's anus is the new vagina, and that the black woman's vagina is becoming obsolete. And then something about LBGTQ. Could you clarify that statement if you in fact said something to that effect?
Well, what I have here in my notes, this is not specifically said in the basic textbook or in the word guide, but I had some notes that I've been reading from that I made recently. And That's the white supremacist, racist, anti-sexual strategy.
Okay.
That's a basic current example. And I gave that as an example. And that is to what? The white supremacist, racist, anti-sexual strategy, basic current example, and I gave that as an example the other day, to systematically produce thought, speech, and action that supports and glorifies the following. Now, this is what the white supremacists are systematically doing now, worldwide. They're supporting and glorifying these following things. White male anuses. The white male anus as being superior to and more so-called sexually desirable than black and or non-white vaginas. I'm going to repeat that again. The white male anus, this is what they're pushing worldwide. They're doing it indirectly. They're not saying it just openly. You know, they'll get around to doing that eventually, maybe. Maybe a few of them will. But basically, they probably won't. They won't put it in those words, but they will be implying that in television, in all of their advertisements, in the field of entertainment, which black people are deeply into and all like that. Movies, television shows, and in seminars, or in all the colleges and whatnot. Oh, they're really working there. And what they're doing primarily is that the white male anus is superior to and more so-called sexually desirable than black and or non-white vaginas. The basic message: white male anuses are the new black vagina. Let's say that again. White male anuses are the new black vaginas. And then another thing they're doing, black vaginas, you know, since they said, you know, if white male anuses are going to be the new black vaginas, then what is the black vagina? What value is it going to have? It will be functionally an ornamental, and are generally obsolete, particularly and preferably when presented in a masculinized body. In other words, black females are going to have to be forced to become more and more masculine because the black male is going to become more and more feminized. That's the strategy. Black males, primping around and whatnot, always, you know, putting on ornaments and whatnot. Their bodies got to have tattoos and got to have earrings and got to, you know, you just like a Christmas tree. Just dump everything on the black male that's manufactured, all right? He's unacceptable the way that he is, just the way that he is, straightforward, super black, you know, right out of the box, all right? No. Put all kind of ornaments on him, like he needs to be ornamented, okay? Like he's some type of tree or something that needs. It's not okay by itself. You got to put something that's manufactured by the white supremacists all over him. Okay, that's where all this tattooing and whatnot is coming from. You can't improve on black skin by putting any kind of graffiti on it. Sirs, ma'ams, all the black people throughout the world who are doing this, they'll say, well, you know, a lot of tribes have been doing it for years and all like that. Still, you don't need it. Not on your black skin. It's just the way it ought to be, just like it is. That's the ornament. That's the ornament. You got black skin. That's what the Creator gave you. But the white supremacists said, oh, no, it's something wrong. You got to add something. No, let them add that stuff all over themselves. That's what they want to do. Go for it. Do it. You know, cover yourself with it. Completely obliterate how you look. Mm-hmm. But if you're black stop doing this stuff. Stop copying everything that you see somebody else do. I mean, you're not some type of fad. You're supposed to be here forever.
Right.
And going into being universal man and universal woman in tune with everything that is a constructive value in the entire universe. That should be our ultimate goal. And we're not preparing ourselves for that at all.
No.
So you're turning the non-white female into a male, and more of them, and more of them are embracing that, and they got the white supremacist females out here urging them on to do it. Come and march with me, all right? And we'll both be, you be the female and I'll be the male. That's what the white female is telling the black female, all right?
Okay.
And that's the way we'll go marching down the path to glory.
Okay.
And see, we've got mass confusion, all right? But I can say some other things on it. I mean, I had some other writings there on it, but that's the gist of what I got to say.
Okay, all right. Well, that question was asked. Talk to him at radio. Now, we're going to do this now because we didn't do it at the 15-minute mark, and this is replacing what Mr. Fuller talked about, his book in the first 15 minutes of the show, but we're going to do this now. Talk to him at radio.com is a 24/7, no-charge, worldwide broadcasting facility with hosts delivering on various topics such as news and lifestyle, sports, law, health, wellness, religion, and politics. Now, here's two that I'd like to share with you. The first one is This Is Libby. Now, I believe, is she on tomorrow at 7, Ed?
Yeah.
Okay, live, correct?
Live.
Okay, This Is Libby. She's on tomorrow at 7 p.m. Eastern Time, live. You might want to check Libby's show out and become liberated or liberated. Deals with holistic issues and good information. So check that out tomorrow at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. This is Libby. And, of course, premiering every other Tuesday. We did it last night, Talking Sports with Mr. Bobby. Yes, that's me. They have given me a program that we can talk about sports. And what I try to do on that program is not only talk about sports, but I introduce different people from all over the country, all over the world that are doing different things in the so-called black community. And I call that segment, which is segment number 2, Tell Me Something Good. We want to hear about that. And then, of course, we have Trent's Rants. That's every other Tuesday from 6 to 7 p.m. Eastern Time on TalkTainmentRadio.com. And as a matter of fact, you can go to the TalkTainmentRadio.com homepage, and there is a list of the programs that Talktainment features with bios and all the necessary information that you might need. All that is from TalkTainmentRadio.com, and it's no mistake that you're listening to the greatest station in the nation. That is TalkTainmentRadio.com. Okay, Mr. Fuller, let's go to the Gmails, 1-877-932-9766. This comes from Brother Fred, and he says this, Mr. Fuller, I've been practicing no contact, no conflict for years, but when I do come in contact, like in a dentist office, and I maintain my distance like with a receptionist because I don't conversing. I'm just reading it as it is. It goes over their head. They always say, you're quiet. I get tired of this same old song and dance. Any code or wisdom for the same old sickening comment? My grandmother always told me, Mr. Fuller, if you don't have anything good to say, don't say nothing. Could you comment on this, please?
Well, he just said it himself. I mean, that's it. That's the gist of it. If you don't have something constructive, I prefer to use the word constructive because in the system of white supremacy, we don't have any idea of what good is.
Okay.
I mean, we've never experienced it. I mean, that's just something that we'll have to find out what goodness is, because you don't experience that in the system of white supremacy. But you do experience something that's constructive and something and a whole lot that is non-constructive. So the procedure is, in every setting, when you're interacting with anybody, white or non-white, You just be constructive. Always keep your mind on constructive conversation.
Okay.
All right? And you don't have to be nervous or anything. I mean, say, okay, here I am. I'm in this situation. No. You always be laid back and relaxed. I mean, you don't have to be uptight about anything. You don't have to act like you're being restrictive. You're not being restrictive. I mean, you're being restricted enough. So you don't add to that. I mean, you're always trying to be as relaxed as you possibly can under all circumstances. And try to get along with people. You're not trying to be distant from people.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, get these words out of your head. I mean, the compensatory procedure is you go among all people, white or non-white. I mean, if they'll allow you to come among them and whatnot, and be constructive. Now, if they have questions about something that you're doing, just simply ask questions. Always stay in the question lane. Stay away from making statements. Just say, well, sir, ma'am, what is it you want me to do? What is it you want me to say? All right? Is it anything that I'm doing that I shouldn't be doing? Just ask questions.
Yes, sir.
If they feel annoyed by your behavior and think it's strange or something like that, they'll say, well, you have strange behavior. And then you ask a question. Strange like how?
How? Mm-hmm.
Yes. Just always take what they're saying and go with it. Don't resist it. Don't try to back up off of it. Don't bristle at it. Don't say, well, why are you approaching me like that? No, you ask the questions. I mean, because, and you do it in a relaxed manner, in a cordial manner, and always in a courteous manner. Well, is it anything that you want me to do? Well, you should be more sociable. I'll just give some examples.
Yes, sir.
They're saying that to me.
Yes, sir.
Because I have no problem with it. I can just glide through all situations like that.
Yes, sir.
They say, well, you're kind of distant. Okay, so I go into the question mode. Distant how?
How? Yes.
Yeah. Say, well, you don't talk much. I said, well, I talk when I think I have something constructive to say, but a lot of times I can't think of anything constructive to say. And just explain yourself.
Yes, sir.
All right. You're not trying to be distant or trying to be hostile or trying to make for a hostile work environment. You're trying to make the day go as smooth as possible. All right? I mean, you are Mr. Smooth or Mrs. Smooth. When you come in, everything is supposed to go smoothly if they're dealing with you.
Yes, sir.
I mean, because you're not supposed to make everything more difficult than it already is. So you just tell people, well, what is it you want? Well, you don't talk about baseball. Well, I don't know very much about baseball, but I'll listen to you talk if you know a lot about baseball.
Yes, sir.
I might learn something about baseball. I mean, do you know anything about baseball? Stay in the question lane.
Mm-hmm.
All right? And let them tell you about baseball. You might learn something that you can use. You don't know.
That's true.
And just let them tell you. Let them do the talking. I mean, particularly around white people, they always claim that they know a lot, and the record shows that they do. And sometimes many of them like to brag about what they know. Let them brag. All right? Encourage them if they're telling you something that is useful.
Yes, sir.
All right? And, and if it's not useful, you don't have to tell them that it's not useful because you don't know whether it's useful or not. You just listen anyway. All right? It might not be useful now, but it might be useful down the road.
Oh, yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yes. So that's the answer.
Okay.
Just glide through. It's not difficult at all, and don't make it difficult.
Okay.
It's not like you're going in with your fist balled up and say, "You better not come at me." I got a code. I mean, if you challenge me, I'm gonna throw the code on you. No, no. It's all you just glide right through. You make the day as pleasant as possible.
Yes, sir.
Because every minute that you're on this planet, try to have what little pleasures you can get in this rotten system of racism.
All righty.
Right.
You are listening to the world's greatest program. Really. You really are. You are listening to the world's greatest program. That is the compensatory concept with Neely Fuller Jr. And not only are you listening to it, you're listening to it on the world's greatest radio, and that is talktainmentradio.com. Let that sink in. Back to the phone. Well, here's the number to call me, 1-877-932-9766. Understand, it's toll free. You don't have to pay for that. Call in and ask Mr. Fuller any questions you want concerning racism, which is white supremacy, and he will address that. Our Gmails have this. Whoops. Okay, let's get it together. There you go, Mr. Bobby. Okay, it says this. This comes from Larry. Mr. Adams, thank you, Larry. He says, Mr. Fuller, my comment on the Economic Policy Institute report referred to the article cited by Mr. Fuller, quote, no progress for African Americans on home ownership, unemployment, and incarceration in 50 years, end of quote. From the Washington Post, dated February the 26th. This was released by the Economic Policy Institute. I commented that this report was in direct contradiction to the claim being made today that black unemployment was at an all-time low. Also, when watching movies made by Hollywood to get messages, we must remember that these movies are propaganda used to support white supremacy. The only code white supremacists have is the code of the thief, the murderer, the liar, and the bandit. Mr. Fuller, would you reply?
Well, all the reports that I get and what I've written in the book, otherwise there'd be no point in me writing a book like the book that I wrote. Racism is about pushing an agenda that shouldn't be anywhere on the planet. It never should have been. And everything about racism is designed to be harmful to people. I mean, it produces a lot of things, but the things that are produced are used to do harm to people.
Yes, sir.
I mean, that's just the nature of racism itself. It's all about doing harm. I mean, for fun, for glory, and for material gain. You know, that's the purpose for racism. Material gain. And just plain old fun. By doing what? Dominating and mistreating people based on color. That's all it is. So when you look at it that way for what it really is, you should expect all of these different results all the time. And here in the Washington Post for Tuesday, which was yesterday, March the 20th, 2018, on page A3, in line with what the person just said, it says, what's the headline? On page A3, the Washington Post newspaper, Tuesday, March the 20th, 2018, it says, unequal opportunity for black males. And it says, even when your parents got rich, the gaps don't go away. These are little things that I'm looking at in this article. The disparity holds true even for young black males raised in the wealthiest of families who grew up in the same block, in the same affluent community, and attended the same school as their white counterparts. The disparity still exists. The findings show that race, not just parental income or neighborhood opportunities, factors into the yawning wealth gap between blacks and whites in the United States. See, the findings show that race, not just parental income or neighborhood opportunities, they are the factors into the yawning wealth gap between blacks and whites in the United States. Now, that's a quote right from this article. I'm looking right at the article now. And it says, race matters. All right?
This is from the Washington Post?
Say that again?
This is the article that's in the Washington Post dated yesterday?
Washington Post on page A3.
Okay.
Tuesday, which was yesterday.
Yes, sir.
This is Wednesday. Yesterday, Tuesday, March the 20th, 2018, the Washington Post newspaper, page A3. The title of that article is, quote, unequal opportunity for black males. That's the article, right in your face. All right, that's not Neely Fuller talking. That's somebody else talking. The somebody else is somebody called, the article is written by Tracy Jan, Jan, Jan.
Jan, okay.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Wow, that's something else.
And the researchers suggested several policy considerations to close the intergenerational gap, including mentoring programs for black male children and efforts to reduce racial bias among whites. They say that's the solution. All right.
Okay. That's what they say is the solution.
That's what this article says in the Washington Post. Anybody who has an argument with that can take it to the Washington Post.
Oh, okay. All righty. Mr. Fuller, you've been a resident of the city of, well, I don't know if it's a city or I guess it's a district. I'm trying to use my words very carefully because I don't know what it is. But it's called the District of Columbia. Is that correct?
Yes.
Now, is the district considered a city or just a district as far as you know?
It's considered, well, they call it a district, but it's considered a city.
Okay.
Yes, a growing city, you might say.
Okay.
And many people say a city going through gentrification.
So
regentrification,
which means the white people are coming back into the city.
Yes, that's what the statistics show, and that's what people say, and these are the words that they use.
Okay.
I did not invent the word gentrification.
Okay, all right. With that being said, there was an article that came out about Marion Barry, and I thought that former mayor of Washington, D.C., Marion Barry, I thought I would address that with you, being that you have some knowledge of former Mayor Marion Barry, who I believe is now deceased, what kind of person that he was or what. A lot of people liked him, but the Congress, I understand, didn't, and handcuffed him in a lot of programs he did. But the articles that I read, that he did a lot for the people in the city despite his indiscretions. Can you address that in the moments that we have before we wind down the first hour?
Well, I'll just say what the people said who voted for him and put him in office several times.
Yes.
And they said that he helped young black people when nobody else would help them. And he helped elderly black people when nobody else would help them.
Yes.
They said that was the backbone. Now, that's what other people say. That's not me talking. That's what I've heard from everybody. That regardless of what he did, I mean, in his so-called personal life and all like that, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, and his conviction for drug use, I understand, which he went to greater confinement for and whatnot, and came out, and the people who voted for him still, many of them, maybe not all, but an appreciable number, said, and that's the reason he helped people who needed help. And young black people definitely needed help. They needed jobs. I understand that Marion Barry, Mayor Marion Barry, saw to it that many of them got jobs. They said the first job and the only job they ever had was able to get was because of him. Nobody would hire them. Nobody would give them anything. Nobody would try to give them anything. They just make sermons and all like that and make speeches, both black people and white people, but no jobs ever appeared up.
Now, do you
But he actually would go around and say, hey, you're getting this job.
Yeah.
All right.
Yes.
And then there were people who said the elderly, black people, in wheelchairs and whatnot, that he helped them.
All righty.
To, get a lot of things done.
Okay.
Help them, get through their paperwork and all this type of thing.
Got to leave that
That's
there.
what I heard.
Okay.
And there's reason to believe it's true.
Okay. Talk to him at radio.com, the world's greatest radio the way it should be heard. Stay tuned for the second hour.
Thanks for listening to The Compensatory Concept with Mr. Neely Fuller, heard exclusively on TalkTainmentRadio.com, the world's greatest radio.
The most important question in all racial matters is why. One should always ask it.
Radio, the way it should be heard.
You got the power. The world's greatest radio. TalkTainmentRadio.com. Talktainment Radio, worldwide sound. TalkTainmentRadio.com. We give you a reason to come. The world's greatest radio. We give you a reason to stay. Radio, the way it should be heard. You got the power.
The views and opinions expressed are those of the host and guest and not necessarily those of TalkTainmentRadio.com, the management, the staff, or K&E World Network, LLC.
Live call-in talk show. Dial 1-877-932-9766 and join the conversation here on TalkTainmentRadio.com.
This is the Compensatory Concept with Mr. Neely Fuller, heard exclusively on TalkTainmentRadio.com, the world's greatest radio. Radio, the way it should be heard. And now, Mr. Neely Fuller.
If you do not understand white supremacy, which is racism, what it is and how it works, everything else that you understand will only confuse you. Only confuse you. Only confuse you.
Oh, good morning. Good morning, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are at all over the world. Man, Ed just gave me some information I'm going to give you. But you are listening to the world's greatest program. You really are. The Compensatory Concept with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr. on the world's greatest radio, TalkTainmentRadio.com, no doubt. Ed just gave me a list. This is our donation hour, and quickly, all you have to do is go to the TalkTainmentRadio.com homepage, and I believe it's on the right-hand side, down underneath the telephone number, there is a donate button. Hit that button, and you can give as much as you would like to give. If you just want to give one time, that's fine. That's fine. But just hit the donate button, and the donate button is for the second hour production, which we are into now, of the Compensatory Concept with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr. and, of course, yours truly, Mr. Bobby, as the co-host. Now, we have two lists here, and I'm just going to read some names, as I said I would, and Ed gave them to me. Now, these are some reoccurring sponsors. BW Gifts, LaShawna King, Eric Williams, Helen Nance, Don Mitchner, and LaShawna King. Now, we have some past supporters, and I'm going to go through them very quickly because I do, and I want to call your name, and I said that I would acknowledge you very quickly. Betty Smith, Noreen Parker, Mario Teran, Brian Goodspeed, Robert Slade, Yvonne Holly, Patrick Smith, Jean Luma, Anita Taylor, Dominic Mosier, EA2 Consultants, Lauren Gooddoe, thank you for that. Lamar and May Brown, Christopher Miller, Shantae Brown, Brian McCarthy, Terrence Morgan, Sharday Harris, Gabriel Murphy, Cornelius Baker, Anthony McKinn, and we mentioned him, McKinn, he's from England, Donna Howard, Markham Smith, Chadwick Gray, Freddie Burgess, Brian Gadsden, Samuel Robinson, J.K. Towles, and Tanya Potts. Talktainment Radio says thanks to all of our sponsors, and if you're not on the list, thank you for your participation and listening. We are TalkTainmentRadio.com, radio, the way it should be heard. So we do thank you for that. Thank you, Ed, for getting that information. For those of you that don't know, we're speaking with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr. You can get in contact with the show by calling 1-877-932-9766. Mr. Fuller will address your questions or concerns. I'm reading Gmails. You can do that, 7mrbobby@gmail.com. And I'm going to read one now. This comes from a brother all the way down in so-called French Guiana. He says about looking at this movie, Hidden Colors. He just said, if you have not seen this documentary, you can check it out. It is Mr. Fuller who gave me the information during a direct conversation. So evidently, Mr. Fuller, he must have called you, and he was inspired to write that. Here's another question. This comes from John. Let me see if I can get the text up here. He says this, Mr. Fuller, Availability of the book in Canada since November 2017. The Canadian book order is not available. What you see when you click to order the book is currently unavailable. We don't know when or if this item will be back in stock. What say you, Mr. Fuller, about this? When will we be able to buy the book again in Canada?
Oh, I didn't know about that, so I'll have to look into that.
Okay.
I'll have to look into that and see if the books are still available in Canada and in England. Those are the two places so far that I've been told they're supposed to be available. So if there's any difficulty in that, I have to look into that immediately, because it's been a long struggle trying to get it into Canada and into England. Mm-hmm. And I was told that was already a done thing. It was already done. Now I'm going to check into that today and find out, has that been done, and is that consistently, is there any problem there?
Okay. Now, if somebody, and I'm asked this question quite a bit, but I just repeat it, how can, in the so-called United States, how can we get the book and then the book title?
Just go to producejustice.com. Producejustice.com. And everything that you need is right there for getting it in what they call the continental United States. It'll tell you exactly how to go about doing it, how to get the basic book, and if you want the word guide too, you can get both books, but the basic book is adequate enough. But some people want both books. They want them in a set. So you can get the set, or you can get either one or the other. You can get them separately. All right? But go to producejustice.com. That's producejustice.com. And there's also other information there. I haven't looked at the site recently, but there's other information about this program, too.
Okay.
That's at that website,
right.
producejustice.com.
All right, that's what we'll do. Okay, 1-877-932-9766 is the number you can call, or Gmail me at the numero 7, Mr. Bobby, BOBBY, at gmail.com, and we'll do that. Okay, this comes from Brother Weston from the Gmails. He said, my first question, Mr. Fuller, is, are we in a race war? I ask because there's an upcoming documentary inspired by your work that's directed and produced by Brother Jason Black that asks this very question to some black scholars, celebrities, and most important, some of the elite and most sophisticated suspected races on the planet. Brother Black asked these suspected white racists directly, are we in a race war? They get off code and say, yes, we are, and we're going to win. They basically put it out what their true beliefs and intentions are for black people across the planet. I hope that you can, those that are listening in the audience will see it, support and purchase the way we are right now with what we're doing with Black Panthers. And then he gives a website for that. So he asked, Mr. Fuller, are we in a race war?
The answer is yes. The whole book is about war. Racism is war. When you say race, you're talking about war. R-A-C-E or R-A-C-I-S-M. Racism. R-A-C-I-S-M is war. The word is synonymous with war, based on color. That's what it is. R-A-C-I-S-M. White supremacy is war. Just look at it like that. I mean, that's not a question mark for the most part, even though it is, if you ask the question. I mean, all questions are legit. So if you ask the question, are black people in a war? We're not only in a war, we are in captivity. You're born in captivity because the races have already so far won the war. But a war isn't over until there's no resistance to to the people who are the conquerors in the war.
Mm-hmm.
Because a war has conquerors, all right? Every war has conquerors, all right? Somebody's going to get the best of somebody else if you take it to its ultimate goal. That's the intention for having conquest. That's what war is about. You conquer your opposition, or someone who is not your opposition. It's just somebody you want to take charge over. All right, the white supremacists have successfully done that. They did that before anybody who is breathing now on the planet was born. So that war was declared a long time ago. See, we don't think of it in some type of modern box like, there's some white supremacists out there trying to start a war against black people. That war was started before anybody on the planet now was born. When, I don't know. Some people say 400 years, some people say 600 years, some people say 2,000 years, all right? But so far, the non-white people of this entire planet have been in captivity to those white people who believe in dominating and mistreating people based on color. So far, they have, quote, unquote, won the war. But the war isn't really over.
Mm-hmm.
It's never been declared over, all right? There's not even been a truce declared that would hold, up in truth. Somebody might have said it in words and whatnot, but there's no truth been declared in function. There's no end to the war has been declared in function. People may give lip service to it and say all racism is a thing of the past and all. No. It's the dominant government on the planet in 2018.
Yes, sir.
There's no government anywhere on the planet Earth more powerful than the government of white supremacy. None. No religion that is more powerful than the religion of white supremacy. So, that is a warlike government. And the captors have already been captured. In other words, the people who are in captivity, all of them, if you're classified as non-white, you're already in a prison camp. It's called the planet Earth. So you're already a prisoner of war. Look at yourself like that, because that's accurate. And act like you're a prisoner of war, which means how does a prisoner of war act? If he or she is going to go the logical route, try to eliminate the prison. There's no way to break out of it. You have to actually eliminate the prison.
Yes.
So that the earth is the type of place that it was meant to be in the first place.
Yes. That's a good point. Man, that was powerful. Thank you, Mr. Fuller. Okay, going to the Gmails. Phone lines again are open, 1-877-932-9766. Joshin wrote this, Mr. Fuller. He says, and I'm hoping it's a he. I didn't want to mess the name up. Every archaeologist, genealogist, historian from around the world has agreed that the first person to ever walk this planet was a black woman from Africa. And that every person in this world is related to that first black woman from Africa. So if we are indeed made in the image of God, he/she must be black. It has also been cited that Africans invented the numerology system, science, engineering, medicine, etc. You have said, Mr. Fuller, that Africans were primitive people. If all of the other countries and people of those countries learned what they know from Africa, how can you call African people primitive? Please explain. And by the way, my donation is in the mail. Mr. Fuller?
I don't mention African people, except to say that African people do not exist. Africans, Americans, and Asians do not exist. What does exist are white people, non-white people, and white supremacists. That's according to what? Counter-racist logic. I always use that as my base.
Yes, sir.
Counter-racist logic says Africans, Asians, and Americans do not exist, and it's impossible for them to exist in a system of white supremacy. So that brings what? Definitions. What is an American? What is an African? And what is an Asian? I call it the 3 A's, all right? These are terms that are used all the time. Asians, Africans, Americans. What are the definitions for each of these terms or all of these terms collectively, according to logic? Well, first of all, they are people. They are not places. There's no such thing as an African place or an Asian place or an American place. These are concepts. What kind of concept? The concept of what? Of justice. You cannot be an African unless you practice justice. That's impossible. You cannot be an American unless you practice justice. That's impossible. You cannot be an Asian unless you practice justice. You have to practice justice in order to be any one of those three. So justice does not exist because the evidence shows justice doesn't exist in the system of white supremacy, which is a global government. See, we're not talking about places here where people are from. When people ask me where I'm from, I tell the truth. And this is the absolute truth. This is the scientific truth. I'm from every place that I have ever been, and I am from every place that I have never been. And this is the kind of answer you give to that question in the code book. This is in the code book. And if you put that to a test, it will always hold up. Everybody is from every place that you have ever been, and you're also, here's the key word, from every place that you have never been. Think about it. You are from every place that you have ever been. Think about it. And you're also from every place that you have never been. There's a blade of grass somewhere. You're from that blade of grass. A blade of grass somewhere in Finland. If there's any grass growing there, and I'm sure there is. Iceland. Well, you are from Iceland. You're from Nova Scotia. These are just places with names. You're from the moon. Why? The moon is there and you're from that moon. You're from it. You say, well, I've never been to the moon. All the same, you're from it. All the more reason why you're from it. You've never been there. And even if you have been there and you leave, you're from the moon. And if you have never been there, you're still from the moon because you've never been there. That's what you call pure science. See, we got to stop getting caught up in these phony words and all these lines on maps that the white supremacists have put there. They don't mean anything. They put lines on maps and they change the maps all the time. So there's no such thing as Africa. Africans are people. Asians are people. Americans are people. But they are also people who practice justice. Otherwise, why be an African if you're not going to practice justice? You can be anything and not practice justice. What is justice? Guaranteeing that every person, or no person is not mistreated. You got to guarantee that. And guaranteeing that the person that needs help the most gets the most constructive help.
Yes.
That's the compensatory definition for justice.
Oh.
That is not true any place. So you don't have justice any place, so therefore you don't have any people that qualify for the term American, the term Asian, and the term African. And it doesn't make any difference where they have been or where they are going until they practice justice, and you have justice on this entire planet, then you don't qualify for any of these terms. So what do you qualify for? Well, within a racial context, you qualify to be a white supremacist or a victim of white supremacists. And that's it. Doesn't make any difference what your credentials are otherwise. Now you have some white people who are not white supremacists, but they are people who are not qualified to be white supremacists because they're not able to be.
Mm-hmm.
All right? And that would include white people, people with white skins, who are what you might call senile to the extent that they cannot tell one color from another. And that would include white babies. See, if you're going to use logic, you cannot include a white baby, a newborn baby, who is white, in the white supremacist category. Because the baby is not able to tell one color from another.
Yes,
in order to be a white supremacist, you have to be able to tell your colors. Otherwise, you're out of business as being white supremacist.
Mm-hmm.
All right? You may have been one 10 years ago, but if you're in a car accident and your brain was damaged to the extent you can't tell one color from another, you're no longer a white supremacist, even though 10 years ago you were going around telling everybody that that's what you were. But you have to be able to know one color from another. That's absolute, or it's impossible for you to practice white supremacy.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All righty. 1-877-932-9766. You can also watch the live broadcast of the compensatory concept. Go to YouTube, type in the word Talktainment, hit the space bar and type in the word radio, scroll down to Talktainment 2 live on YouTube, and watch the live broadcast of the program. While you're there, hit the subscribe and also the like button. And since this is the second hour, this is the donation hour, where you are, if you can, and if you would like to, donate to the second hour, the production of the second hour of the compensatory concept with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr. here on TalkTainmentRadio.com. I really mean that when I say that you are listening to the world's greatest program, because it is. And it's on the world's greatest station, because it is. And that is TalkTainmentRadio.com. I don't take this privilege lightly. It is really a privilege to be on the air, to have you ask questions and have Mr. Fuller address those. That's great to me. And that's what we're doing right now. 1-877-932-9766. Okay, from the Gmail. Here we go again. Come on, Mr. Bobby. Okay, from the Gmails, let me see if I can get the question correctly. Let's see. We answered that one, so let me move on to this one here. Okay. Dr. Frances Cress Welsing, Mr. Fuller, you did a few programs with her. I believe it was coming from different angles. A Sunday was the second, I don't want to call it anniversary, but she was born on March the 18th. And someone sent me a Gmail acknowledging the fact that it was her birthday. From what you know about Dr. Weston, because she cannot speak for herself anymore, the words speak for her, and her works are also speaking, even though they are trying to be compromised like some of your works are. Just a brief thing on Dr. Frances Cress Welsing.
So your question is?
What do you know about Dr. Frances Cress Welsing that, from an informational standpoint?
Oh, she established the Cress theory of color confrontation. That's one of the titles of her first publications. The Cress theory that has to do with melanin and the origin of white people, et cetera, and it's expressed in her works. I always say, when people ask me about Dr. Welsing, how much I knew about her personally and all like that, I just simply refer to her work. I say her work stands as her legacy. She has lots of tapes out here, recordings. She made speeches even in England and whatnot. She made trips over there, made trips to London. Some people know her in London and overseas in different parts of the world. And she made trips, to the best of my knowledge. She made some of them with me. I made them with her in different cities here, Philadelphia, Los Angeles, and whatnot. But she always spoke separately, and I spoke separately, even in her own established institute at Howard University, which for years she had there at the Blackburn Center at Howard University on that campus. Every now and then she would invite me, sometimes about twice a year, to the Cress Welsing Institute. That was the name of it.
Yes, sir.
It's her family name. All right. Hello, I hear.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
Okay.
Okay. Yes. Okay.
Yes. And so, whenever I would make a talk, I would just make a talk from my writings. And whenever she would make a talk, she would make a talk from her writings. That's the United Independent factor. All right? Because I always say, everybody stand by his or her own work.
Yes, you do.
So when people ask me, to make comment about, whether Dr. Welsing meant this or whether she meant that, whether she didn't mean this, or to explain. Hello, I hear some echoes or something.
Okay, we're efforting to correct that problem. Continue, please.
And when people ask me about anything about Dr. Welsing's work, I always say, go to her work. Neely Fuller is not going to step into evaluating what Dr. Welsing has done. Let the people that she talked to, and Dr. Welsing was very well spoken. In fact, I always listened to her speak, and I was always impressed by the manner in which she delivered what she had to say, because I would like to have had that manner in which she delivered her information. I don't have that manner. Sometimes I have, I'm sort of outside the parameters of highs and lows and all like that. And sometimes I come across as garble, which I do on this program, which is an absolute no-no. I'm not clear and I'm not focused. That happens. Sometimes I'm sure that people who call in to get their questions answered are not sure of what they heard. And that's my fault. I'm supposed to always be clear. But Dr. Welsing was very measured in her delivery. And I watched her when she would make a delivery of whatever she was saying. She was always very, very methodical, very measured, very careful with her words for the most part. Like all people, she may have made some errors and all like that. But for the most part, from what I have witnessed, she was always very measured in her delivery, and you got the picture of what she was saying,
okay,
whether you agreed with it or not.
Okay.
She has plenty of recordings out here if you can get them. Plenty of them.
Yes.
A whole ocean of them.
Okay.
So that's best that I can say about that.
All right. As a matter of fact, after the caller, when we come back after break, I'm going to play about a 2-minute recording of Dr. Welsing. TalkToMeRadio.com. We're going to go to the phone lines. And go ahead, caller. You are now on with Mr. Neely Fuller, Jr. Go ahead with your question.
Oh, yeah. I just want to make a comment. And a question. I know that Mr. Fuller wants to critique himself and always be learning, but I think he's one of the wisest men that I haven't heard anyone even close to the way he's analyzed our situation. So I want to say that to him. And I also would like to know when is his birthday. That would be my question. Thank you.
Okay.
And I know he has a different perspective of birthdays, but, just when was he born in general? When was he born? Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Fuller, I don't know how you want to handle that, but the gentleman...
I didn't hear that question.
Well, he wanted to know when was your birthday?
When was my birthday?
Yes.
Oh, well, according to the record, my birthday is October 6th,
Okay.
1929.
October 6, 1929. Okay, and before we move on to that, were you... Oh, okay, well, the Tulsa race riots had already happened, so you can't really address too much of that. Okay, as promised, I'm going to give you about a 2-minute and 50-second, almost 3 minutes of Dr. Frances Cress Welsing. This is a speech that she gave in 2015 concerning Donald Trump. Prediction. Okay, go ahead with that, please.
See, every single thing that we are concerned about, every single thing when you turn on the TV tomorrow morning that they will talk about, will all be related to racism, white supremacy as a system. Okay, Donald Trump. I say meet your next president. See, all kind of people from the time he started talking. Oh, he's crazy. Oh, he's this. Oh, he won't. Oh, the American people won't accept something. Donald Trump has pulled the hood off of, the sheet off of, the cover off of the system of racism, white supremacy. See, he pulled it off, and he's talking with more clarity than anybody else, who all the other candidates quietly are thinking about racism, but they're not talking overtly about it. But Donald Trump is talking. So like I said, Donald Trump's trump card is the race card in the system of racism, white supremacy. The New York Times editorial today, the Trump effect. See, this is what I'm doing with my money, buying newspapers like Dick Gregory. The Trump effect and how it spreads. It says we are on the brink, under Trump, on the brink of fascism. New York Times, all the news that's fit to print, editorial 12/10/2015. I say fascism is end-stage white supremacy. So just like in Nazi Germany. Fascism, system of racism, white supremacy, determined to survive.
There you heard the words of the late Dr. Frances Cress Welsing on a speech in 2015 predicting the election of Donald Trump. 2015. She did the analysis. Then she determined that. 1-877-932-9766. Mr. Fuller, there's a question from this person. He says this, Mr. Fuller, I look at Africa and how to this very day they have an open door policy to those who they know mean them no good. Some there will even beg for the European to return and recognize them. Now, I juxtapose that with the Chinese, who you have deemed likewise victims of white supremacy, yet they have closed borders in their own nation, don't easily allow in Western inventions, and technology is a world power, and have essentially replaced Europe as the chief colonizer on the continent of Africa. We even hear some self-admitted white supremacists heap praise on the Chinese as the most intelligent beings on the planet, even over themselves. So what say you, Mr. Fuller, as to this dynamic, and do you believe that your idea that the Chinese being victims of white supremacy is a bit passé, perhaps from the time when you first began writing your text in the late 50s, and when Europe still had a firm grip on the world control? I'll listen for your response, and thank you, Mr. Fuller.
I don't speak in terms of Europe or any of that. I don't even know what Europe is. When I looked in the dictionary, it said the Eurasian continent. That thing called Europe is called a mixture of Europe and Asia. And so it comes down to what is the definition of Europe and what's the definition of Asia. And like I said Asians don't exist. So, what's a European? I got no idea what that is. Even in my word guide, I say, hey, what's a European? What qualifies you to be a European? I mean, what does that mean? What does it mean to be a European? All right? What does it mean to be anything? An Asian, an American, an African? What does it actually mean when you say, hey, African, I'm African? What does that actually mean? When many people who are called Africans will say, I don't know what you're talking about. I'm Zulu. Or they'll name themselves by some tribal name, just like in the Northwestern Hemisphere. They'll say Native Americans or American Indians. And then there are people who will say, I am Apache. I'm Sioux. I'm Cherokee. I'm Creek. I am Seminole. What's all this stuff about Native American? Where'd that come from? I never called myself this. This is something somebody calls me. And who is that somebody? Well, the usual suspects, the white supremacists. They go around and say who can go where. Whether or not, if you're Chinese, you can go into Africa. In answer to the question, yes, that's white supremacy. The white supremacists, decide who can go into Africa because they are already there. The white supremacists never left. All right, many of them left, but they left on their own will because if they want to be there now, they just walk right in. Like they walk right into any place, walk right into your living room if they want to. Nobody's got the muscle that they have. Nobody's proven that they have that kind of muscle. They go any place they want to go. They just, and there's a door there, they just kick it in. But most of the time, they just walk in. Just walk in and say, I'm here. Because I'm a white supremacist. I can go anywhere. Everybody else got to get permission. Permission from whom? From me, the white supremacist, if you are a person of color. You don't go no place without my permission. Mm-hmm. All right? They have proven that. Mm-hmm. See, they can make you leave a place even if you're there. And they got all kinds of ways of doing that. And so, yes, in answer to the question, the white supremacists are still supreme over the people of color, regardless of what they call themselves, Chinese, Indonesian, Pakistanis, Muslims, Christians, Catholics, Jews. If you are a person of color, the white supremacists determine your fate. Period. Why? Because they'll say one thing. It's one thing I can do. If I don't want to argue with you, I can blow you up, and you can't touch me. Period. Even though you think you can. Okay. I got something for you, even though you may think that you got the same thing that I got. I always have something that you don't know about. See, the white supremacists have proven that so far, and nobody's proven them different.
Okay. And speaking of blow up, as we reported in the first hour, according to NBC News, the Austin, Texas bomber not only has been caught, but has been killed. He blew himself up. It was a white man, they claim, that blew himself up. SWAT was going in to get him, and he detonated a bomb, I believe, in a car and blew himself up. One of the SWAT officers was injured, and there will be further reports on this, I'm sure, on the network news and breaking news all throughout the day. You are listening to the world's greatest radio program, and that is The Compensatory Concept with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr., and you're listening to it on the world's greatest radio, TalkTainmentRadio.com. Phone lines are open, 1-877-932-9766, and let's go to the phone lines right now. Okay, caller, you're on with Mr. Fuller.
Good morning, Mr. Bobby and Mr. Fuller. Mr. Fuller, the comment you just made about the white supremacists going wherever they want and essentially having the military power to take over any place on the continent, would that speak to the white supremacists prioritizing their existence before their dominance over non-white people?
Would that do what now?
Would that mean that white supremacists prioritize their existence over their dominance of non-white people, meaning even if non-white people, even if they eliminate all non-white people, they would still exist and have no problem existing without non-white people on Earth?
Oh, sure. They can function. They know more than anybody else. You don't have anybody on this planet that know more than the white supremacists. I mean, that's been proven. If we knew more than the white supremacists, we wouldn't be subject to them. All right? So you don't really have any smart black people, period. There's no such thing as a smart black person in the system of white supremacy. Because a smart black person is not subject to the system of white supremacy. That's the first order of business. You prove that you're smart when no white supremacist can tell you what to do, and you got to do it. That's how you prove you're smart. Now, if you are not able to do that, then you're not smart. I don't care what kind of school you've been to, or what kind of, guru has come along, or what kind of message has come to you in the middle of the night and all like that. If you are still under the system of white supremacy, you're not smarter than the system, than the white supremacists. That goes for everybody. If you're under them, if you have to do what they say, anytime they tell you you got to do something and you do it, that's proof that you are not as smart as they are if you don't want to do it, but you did it. All right? And no black person that I know about on this planet has been in position to say, I ain't doing that. I ain't doing that. And the white supremacists said, well, I'm ordering you to do that. And that black person says, yeah, you say I better do this. Okay, make me. And I've never seen or heard of any black person anywhere who didn't back down. Make an apology. Do whatever it takes to go along to get along. Never even heard of one. Never heard of one. Not to say anything about met one.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All right. Is that it, caller?
Well, I mean, I just wanted to get his definition of smart, because would that mean as non-white people we would have to do like the white supremacists, meaning guaranteeing that if any other group of people weren't on the planet, that we would still be existing and thriving and, solving problems. And
the criteria is to produce justice. So when we're talking to Chinese and whatnot, we tell people the same thing. I don't care what kind of people you're talking to. I mean, people that you never even heard of. I mean, people from Mars. I mean, you tell them, first of all, if we're going to enact, are we going to have justice? Meaning guaranteeing. See, you got to have that definition for justice. Guarantee that nobody is mistreated. That's number one. Number two, guarantee that the person that needs help the most gets the most constructive help. Otherwise, we do not have the type of situation that we should have. And I don't care who we're talking to. White, non-white, short, tall, male, female. Hey, if we're going to do business, if we're going to interact with each other any kind of way, is it going to be on the basis of justice? And just one definition, not 15 or 20 different definitions for justice. No, just one. Guarantee that no person, I don't care who that person is mistreated. You got to guarantee that no person is mistreated. That's number one. Number two, got to guarantee that the person that needs help the most gets the most constructive help. Now, if you're talking to anybody who is supposed to be Chinese, anybody who is supposed to be Indonesian, anybody who's supposed to be Indian, anybody who's supposed to be white, anybody who's supposed to be Republican, Democrat, communist, capitalist, socialist, can you guarantee that no person is going to be mistreated?
Okay.
And that every person, out of all the people, if there's 10 people in a room, you start with the person that needs help the most, and then work back. Start with number 10 and work back to number 1. That's the criteria. If you're not meeting that criteria, we got to go back to the drawing board. Okay. And you're not a person that I can trust.
Okay. And your final question, caller?
Okay, Mr. Fuller, can we agree that no person among the white supremacists, besides white supremacists, mistreat white supremacists, and the white supremacists who needs help the most get the most constructive help by other white supremacists? And would that not be a small sample of justice? And can we not see that if justice among the white supremacists, a small group of people?
No, we can't get justice. We can't have justice and white supremacy on the same planet.
It doesn't exist.
Got to get that straight right out the gate.
Yeah.
See, that will not work. You have to get rid of the system of white supremacy to even start really seriously thinking about a thing called justice. All right? Because it's impossible to have justice and white supremacy on the same planet. That's impossible. That can't be done. You have to rid the system, first of all, of racism, which is white supremacy, and then in the process be producing a thing that's never existed in recorded history called justice. So all this study of black history and all like that doesn't mean anything if it's not about justice. I mean, there are people who will argue about that and all like that, but if you stop and think about it logically, what's the point? And anybody talking about anything, any kind of era,
yes,
even in history, taking up all that time, I mean, going through history books, this person went here, this person went there, this person discovered this. If you're not talking about producing justice, that's just a whole bunch of people moving around doing unjust things. That's all. And there's no criteria for justice. Because there's nothing in recorded history that say that anybody ever practiced justice. Nothing that I've ever found.
Wow. Let's go to the phone lines. What line number 1? Okay, line number 1, you're on with Mr. Fuller. Go ahead, please.
Good day, Mr. Bobby, Mr. Fuller. This is Brother Muko from Baltimore.
Hey,
with
Brother
those
Muko.
participatory constructive action discussions. Hey, how you feeling?
Good, sir.
We're going to be doing this Saturday at noon, weather permitted. But, Mr. Fuller, my question for you today is for my care unit in Baltimore, can you expound on how, and you teach us this all the time, but can you expound on how the white supremacist plays each side of every argument for confusion purposes?
Oh, absolutely. That's what they do all day long, everywhere. In this day and time, here in 2018. Just look at the newspapers and all like that. Oh, you say that, the white supremacists are for this and against that, and, they are for and against everything simultaneously. They play all sides of every argument.
All sides.
Oh, yeah, and this causes what?
Confusion.
Now you're talking. That's the key word to always look for when you're dealing with a white supremacist. They are masters of what? Confusion.
Absolutely.
Why? Because they have found out, logically, by studying the entire universe, that when you can confuse any organism, you can master that organism. You're the master. So they move among people all the time, and they master people of color based on what? Confusion. This is why the people who are called red people or Indians or Native Americans or different names that the white supremacists give them and that they give themselves. But among them, there's an old saying, speak with forked tongue. Say one thing, do another. Very strange people, these white supremacists. Say one thing, do another. What does that cause? Confusion. And everybody that they have conquered, and they have conquered everybody of color, they have done it through the science, the art, the whatever you want to call it, of mastering the way to confuse people. They'll dazzle you with footwork. They'll dazzle you with magic words of all types so that you just become groggy. Just them talking to you, you become groggy. Your head begins to hurt, And at the same time, they can lift you up where you become real alert. And you think that you're hearing something wonderful. They're good at that. See, they know how to play all sides. They know how to move your moves. They know how to make you angry. They know how to make you laugh. You'll just be falling out all over the place, knocking the furniture over, laughing. They know how to do that with black people. And we love to laugh. We love to laugh about anything. We love to laugh about things we shouldn't be laughing about. All right? But they know how to make us laugh at our misery. All right? Just knocking the furniture over, laughing, falling down, kicking. All right? And they know how to make us real angry and then kill us for being angry. See? They know how to play all sides of everything. They are master manipulators. They're good at what they do. Nobody can deny that. I mean, it's a marvel to watch them when they're at their peak. And they're at their peak most of the time when they really get serious.
Okay. Well, Brother Muko, thank you for calling in, and thank you for explaining about your care unit last night on Talking Sports with Mr. Bobby. I can tell right now that you and your care unit are deeply involved in the words and suggestions that Mr. Fuller makes.
Absolutely, and I'm looking forward to doing another part 2 to that too, Mr. Bobby.
Okay, that'll be fine. Okay.
All right.
Thank you so much, Brother Muko.
Okay, brother.
All right. Mm-hmm. Yeah, Brother Muko is one of our loyal listeners to not only to Mr. Fuller's program here, the compensatory concept with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr., but also on my program, Talking Sports with Mr. Bobby, which premieres every other Tuesday here on TalkTainmentRadio.com. Every other Tuesday. From radio, the way it should be heard. Well, listen, when you hear that music, you know what that means. That means it's time. So thank you to Mr. Fuller. Thank you, callers and listeners. TalkTainmentRadio.com, the world's greatest radio, and radio the way it should be heard. We'll see you next week. Thank you, Mr. Fuller.